Hello and welcome to What is the Callisto Protocol? Do think we will hear you scream in space? What is the Callisto Protocol? The Callisto Protocol is a survival horror video game developed by Striking Distance Studios and published by Krafton. It was released on December 2, 2022 and is directed by Glen Schofield, who had previously co-created the Dead Space series. The game's story follows Jacob Lee, who is sent to a prison facility set on the planet Callisto, fighting against infected prisoners with an unknown disease while uncovering dark secrets of the facility. Gameplay has players exploring a series of levels, solving puzzles, and garnering resources while fighting off infected prisoners. Development of the game began with the formation of Striking Distance Studios back in June 2019. Originally developed as a game set in the PUBG, Battlegrounds universe along with the company, it later evolved into the studio's own intellectual property with its own original story and lore. The team uses Unreal Engine 4 to make use of the new technology for the next generation consoles to immerse the experience. The game was released for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X/S on December 2, 2022. The game received mixed reviews from critics, with some calling it a worthy spiritual successor to the Dead Space series and praised its atmosphere, visuals, voice acting and sound design, though criticism was directed toward its combat, difficulty, short length, linearity and lack of replay value. The PC version was also criticized for its technical issues at launch. What is gameplay? In the Callisto Protocol, players assume the role of Jacob Lee, an inmate of Black Iron Prison on the moon Callisto. Jacob is controlled from a third-person perspective, and most important gameplay information is displayed via a holographic HUD viewed from the same perspective. Jacob's health is indicated by an implant on the back of his neck called a core device, and his health can be replenished with injection-style pickups. In addition to gun-based combat, there is a melee combat system in which Jacob must dodge enemy attacks while looking for openings to strike and kill the enemy. Enemies can lose their limbs during combat or be decapitated. If Jacob's health is reduced to 0, enemies will execute him in a graphically violent manner. In the course of the game, Jacob can also collect and review audio logs that provide deeper insights into the characters and setting. The Callisto Protocol will mix third-person combat with in-depth storytelling, providing the player with strategy segments and then expanding the story with around an hour's worth of cinematics that dive into the game's world. Enemy variety will be expansive and will require a mix of ranged and melee combat to succeed. If the player utilizes all the tools at their disposal, they can complete the game in about 12 to 14 hours and see the credits. What is the plot? In 2320, Jacob Lee and his partner Max Barrow are contract freight transporters working for the United Jupiter Company and co-pilots of the UJC Charon. They have recently been ferrying shipments of an unlabeled, volatile cargo between Europa and the UJC-operated Black Iron Prison on Callisto, and their latest run promises to be lucrative enough for them to retire. During the descent from orbit to BIP, the Charon is boarded by the Outer Way, a group purportedly responsible for numerous terrorist attacks on civilians, and the ship crash lands on Callisto's surface. Jacob and Outer Way leader Danny Nakamura are the only survivors. Both are recovered by BIP security head Captain Leon Ferris and incarcerated without charges or trial on the orders of Warden Duncan Cole. Jacob awakens after the grueling intake process to find the prison being overrun by hostile inmates afflicted with an unknown disease. He encounters Elias Porter, a longtime prisoner who claims to have an escape plan, and they work together to overcome the infected, the prison security systems, and the rapidly deteriorating prison itself. Elias tells Jacob that in order for their escape plan to succeed, they have to break out a skilled hacker who can summon a ship from orbit so that Jacob can fly them out. However, the hacker turns out to be Danny, and she refuses to join Jacob and Elias and pursues her own plan. Regardless, Jacob and Elias make their way for the tram that can take them to the BIP hangar. They are intercepted by Ferris and ejected from the facility, where Elias dies when his spacesuit is damaged, and he suffocates. Danny arrives, recovers Elias's data about BIP, and reluctantly decides to team up with Jacob as the infected personnel begin to mutate further and become more dangerous. They commandeer a vehicle, but instead of going to the hangar, Danny makes a detour to the wreck of the Karen. She searches the cargo hold for a UJC bioweapon that had been smuggled off of Europa but is disappointed to only find regular medical supplies. They continue on to the hangar and Danny calls down a ship to pick them up. However, Duncan intervenes and shoots down the ship, stating nobody is allowed to escape. The ship crashes into the hangar and causes it to collapse, forcing Jacob and Danny to flee. With their only method of escape gone, Jacob and Danny decide that their only course of action is to confront Duncan directly and get answers from him. To get back to the prison, they make their way through the ruins of Arcus, Callisto's original colony before it was abandoned and the BIP was built on top of it. They discover that Arcus suffered an outbreak similar to what occurred in BIP, and the UJC subsequently exterminated the entire colony and covered it up. They also find a lab holding a dead alien creature that the original Arcus miners accidentally unearthed. Seeing its potential for accelerated evolution, the UJC harvested the alien's larvae and began experimenting with it on humans, which ultimately caused outbreaks on Europa and in BIP. They are then ambushed by an infected Ferris, who has managed to maintain his intelligence. While Jacob and Danny manage to escape, Danny ends up being infected. Once they return to BIP, Jacob is knocked out by a security robot and put back in his original cell. Jacob is then freed from his cell by the prison doctor, Dr. Caitlin Marler, and she instructs him to meet her at her lab, where she can cure Danny's infection and get him to Duncan. She reveals that Duncan is part of a group attempting to enact a plan called the Callisto Protocol, which is to find a way to advance human evolution. To further this end, Duncan arranged for a second outbreak to occur in BIP similar to Arcus in order to find a subject compatible with the alien infection. Dr. Marler also tells Jacob that the only way to cure Danny is to extract Ferris's DNA, which can be used to synthesize an antidote. When Jacob asks for the truth behind the outbreaks on Europa, Dr. Marler admits that a diluted version of the infection was accidentally released and provides Jacob access to Danny's memories through their neural implants. Jacob learns that Danny's sister was killed in the Europa outbreak and recovers his own memories, where he was aware that the UJC was using his ship to smuggle alien lava samples, but he remained willfully ignorant due to the payments he was receiving. Jacob confronts Duncan, who pits him against the Alpha Ferris. Despite Ferris's mutations, Jacob is able to defeat him and extract his DNA. Duncan attempts to convince Jacob to turn over the DNA sample to him, but Jacob instead uses it to cure Danny. Angered, Duncan activates the BIP's self-destruct countdown and boasts that he has still gathered enough data to carry out the Callisto Protocol. Jacob and Danny then rush for the prison's escape pods, but only find one left. Jacob puts Danny in the escape pod along with an alien lava sample, giving Danny all the evidence she needs to expose the UJC's secret experiments. Jacob stays behind in BIP and continues to fight the infected creatures until Dr. Marler contacts him again. She manages to temporarily halt the self-destruct sequence and tells Jacob they can still escape, but they will have to work together. She is abruptly cut off by a still-living biophage Ferris, who attacks Jacob in a jump scare. What is development? The origins of the Callisto Protocol began with the formation of Striking Distance as a studio within PUBG Corporation, now PUBG Studios, in June 2019, helmed by Glen Schofield, who had previously co-created the Dead Space series at Visceral Games. The studio was created to expand the PUBG Battlegrounds universe by creating a narrative-driven game. Schofield said that when he met with PUBG Corporation where they explained their goal to expand the PUBG narrative, he already had the concept for the Callisto Protocol in mind and presented that to them and worked with them to fit his idea into their universe. However, by May 26, 2022, Schofield stated that the game had grown to be its own story and is no longer connected to PUBG, though there remained small nods to the latter. Schofield wanted to keep the game grounded in reality to some degree, and thus selected a potentially human colonizable location like Callisto as the setting. The moon has been theorized to have a subsurface ocean of water, which Schofield believed could offer a mystery to tie into the game. Among others working on the game include Steve Papoutzis, who also co-developed the Dead Space series and led the series following Schofield's departure from Visceral, Scott Whitney, designer on the Dead Space series, and Christopher Stone, the animation director for the former series. Of the 150 employees of Striking Distance, Schofield said that about 25 to 30 former co-workers from Visceral Games and Sledgehammer Games are part of Striking Distance working on the Callisto Protocol. Several journalists commented on thematic and gameplay similarities to the Dead Space series. Notably, the game appears to include the same type of diegetic interface that Dead Space had used by a holographic indicator on the back of the prisoner's neck that indicates their health status and other attributes to the player. Schofield said that the comparisons to Dead Space reflect on his style of game, and while he still wanted to create something different, the illusions and inspiration from Dead Space fell out naturally from his creative approach. It was announced Josh Duhamel will provide the voice and motion capture for main protagonist Jacob Lee. At Comic-Con 2022, it was revealed that Karen Fukuhara and Sam Witwer would be joining the cast. Fukuhara plays Danny Nakamura, leader of the resistance group A Better Way, while Witwer portrayed Leon Ferris, the captain of the prison guard. In addition to providing voices, the cast also performed with motion capture technology. Karen Fukuhara commented that, prior to acting in motion capture, the development team would show us what the room would look like on artwork that they had done. The Callisto Protocol was designed for the newer home game consoles, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and Series S, in addition to other platforms. Schofield stated his intent was really trying to make the scariest game on next-gen platforms, in the same way that Dead Space had been considered on its release for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. He stated that the game will take advantage of new lighting techniques and 3D audio systems offered by the new consoles, as well as haptic feedback that the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller provides, to create deep immersion for the player in the game. Striking Distance Studios' Chief Technical Officer Mark James said the game was developed with maximum realism in mind. It uses Unreal Engine 4. Krafton and Striking Distance have partnered with Skybound Entertainment for release of the game, as Skybound sees potential for additional multimedia opportunities beyond the video game for the concept. In September 2022, Schofield, in a now-deleted tweet, made some statements that appears to glorify crunch culture, which led to some negative online reaction, including from Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier, who has reported on crunch culture in the past. Schofield later apologized in a follow-up tweet. In an interview with Immerse, Schofield took responsibility for crunching his staff, and promised that crunch is not a thing that happens in our next project or any future project. What is release? On October 27, 2022, the Japanese release was cancelled when the game did not get a 0 rating due to the game's violent content and the developer refused to make the necessary changes. On release day, the PC version encountered numerous performance issues, which many have cited as rendering the game unplayable even on high-end PCs. The issues include Unreal Engine 4 not pre-compiling shaders, which causes stuttering as shaders are compiled as the player progresses through the game, an issue that has affected numerous PC releases utilizing Unreal Engine in the past, VSYNC issues, and performance loss caused by the de novo DRM. On the same day, the developers promised an update improving the game's performance in the following hours. Also, although not as severe as the PC version, the Xbox Series X/S release has been cited as having poor performance. What is reception? According to Metacritic, the Callisto Protocol received generally favorable reviews on PC, PS5, and mixed or average reviews on Xbox Series X. Critics praised the game's atmosphere and attention to detail in visual and sound design, but the combat was criticized for being clunky, especially when engaging multiple enemies at once. Several reviewers made note of the game's difficulty. The game was also criticized for its short length, linearity, and lack of replay value. Due to performance issues, the Callisto Protocol was criticized for its technical issues. The PC version was initially review bombed on Steam. That same day, an update was released, fixing most of the PC performance issues. References. Thanks for watching. What is the Callisto Protocol?